I was halfway through my second cup of French press coffee when my phone buzzed across the marble countertop. The sunlight, sharp and golden, spilled through the floor-to-ceiling windows of my Manhattan apartment, catching the rim of the mug like a spotlight. Morning meetings waited in my calendar. A silk blouse clung coolly to my shoulders, the navy one I always wore when I wanted to look effortlessly in control. I wasn't expecting drama before 9 a.m. The text preview flashed from my sister, Caroline. Rachel, wedding set for next month. We're keeping it small, only family. But could you watch Lily that weekend? We really need you. I read it twice, the steam from my coffee curling up into the sudden silence. Only family. The word struck harder than I wanted to admit. Caroline knew exactly how those two syllables would land, as if years of bruised childhood memories were pressed into them. Yet, with the same breath, she asked me to babysit her 4-year-old daughter. A bitter laugh escaped before I could stop it. The skyline beyond the glass blurred as my throat tightened, not from sadness anymore, but from something sharper, steadier. I had spent years mastering that steadiness, building a life no one in my family had ever imagined for me, one they still didn't bother to ask about. And now, apparently, I wasn't family, except when convenient. I set the phone down carefully, as if the marble could feel the weight of my decision forming. The text dragged me backward in time, to a night that still pulsed like an old bruise. I was 21, sitting on the worn sofa in our Ohio living room, the smell of overcooked pot roast hanging in the air. Caroline stood by the fireplace, arms folded, already glowing with the kind of certainty I used to envy. She'd just announced her engagement to Daniel, back then, the golden boy of her college business program. My parents beamed at her, as though she'd brought them the moon. I had come home from my shift at the campus library, still in my faded staff t-shirt, carrying a crumpled acceptance letter to a summer writing residency in New York. I'd been holding it close to my chest all day, my heart knocking with hope. Writing. My father's brow furrowed when I finally shared the news. That's nice, Rachel. But it's not exactly a plan. Caroline's laugh chimed like silverware in a sink. She means she wants to be the next Emily Dickinson or something. Cute, right? The words sliced cleaner than she could have known. I felt my cheeks burn, but I kept my voice steady. It's a competitive program. They only accepted 10 students. Mom patted my hand absent-mindedly, eyes already drifting back to Caroline. That's wonderful, dear. But New York? It's so far. Maybe finish your degree first. Play it safe. Play it safe. The phrase landed like a lock snapping shut. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I sat on the back porch under a sky so full of stars it almost hurt. In my lap lay my grandmother's silver locket, engraved with a single word, brave. She'd given it to me on my 16th birthday, whispering, "For the day you choose yourself." I pressed the cool metal to my palm and finally let the tears come. The porch boards creaked softly beneath my bare feet as I made a quiet vow. I would go. No matter their doubts, no matter Caroline's smirk, I would take that residency and carve a life no one could belittle. 2 weeks later, before the sun lifted over the cornfields, I packed a single suitcase, slipped the locket around my neck, and left. No dramatic goodbye, no last glance at the house. Just the sound of my own heartbeat, steady and certain, as the bus rumbled toward the city, where I would build everything they couldn't imagine. The first months in New York were a blur of coffee shops, library desks, and tiny apartments with peeling paint and noisy neighbors. I worked 3 part-time jobs, waitressing, tutoring, and an internship at a small publishing house, just to keep the lights on and my dream alive. Every evening, I would return to my cramped studio, drop my bag, and stare at the skyline from the single grimy window, imagining the life I wanted to build. It was quiet, lonely, but somehow electric. It was during one of those long nights that I met Clara, a seasoned editor at the publishing house who seemed to see more in me than I did in myself. She had a sharp eye for talent and a soft way of encouraging it. "You've got fire, Rachel," she'd said one night over lukewarm coffee. "Don't let anyone make you feel like it's too much or too little. Just right. Every day." Her words became a lifeline. I poured myself into the work. My hands cramped from typing late into the night, coffee mugs piled like trophies around my laptop. There were days I questioned myself, whether I was talented, whether I belonged, whether the city would swallow me whole. But every small victory kept me going. My first article published online, then a story in a respected magazine, then a small contract for a book that had been simmering in my notebook for years. Slowly, I learned the language of independence. Contracts, negotiations, taxes, networking. I faced people who underestimated me, patrons who assumed I was the intern, editors who doubted my ideas, but I let my work speak louder than my words. Every no became a brick in the foundation I was quietly building. By the time I moved into a one-bedroom apartment with real hardwood floors and the tiniest balcony overlooking the East River, I was beginning to see the fruits of years of sweat and late nights. I had a few clients who trusted me with major projects, a growing readership, and most importantly, a confidence that no one could dismiss. All the while, I kept my success carefully private from my family. I posted modest updates on social media, careful to avoid anything that could hint at the true scale of what I was accomplishing. They could still think I was struggling in New York, just as they had always assumed. And maybe that was the best part. I was building a life they didn't understand, a version of me that thrived without their permission. I was finally living for myself, not for the validation of the people who had once made me feel invisible. Every small victory felt like a quiet rebellion, every late-night triumph a reminder that I had chosen myself, and that choice had changed everything. I didn't expect them to arrive so early. The doorbell rang just as I was finishing a draft for a major client pitch, my laptop balanced precariously on my lap. Caroline stood there with her usual perfect smile, a bouquet of tulips in one hand and Lily clutching her other arm like a lifeline. My parents lingered behind her, their expressions a mix of politeness and curiosity. None of them expected to see this. I set the laptop aside and took a breath. My apartment was quiet but deliberate, elegant without screaming wealth. A hand-picked collection of art from local artists lined the walls, shelves stacked neatly with books I'd collected over the years, and the scent of freshly brewed coffee lingered in the air. Every detail spoke of a life built meticulously, purposefully. Lily tugged at my sleeve. "Aunt Rachel, can we play?" I smiled, kneeling to her level, but kept my gaze steady on Caroline. "Of course," I said, then motioned toward the small play area I'd arranged. Caroline raised an eyebrow, glancing around. "Wow, this place, it's different from what we imagined." I let the silence stretch, letting them take it all in. The expensive art, the organized office, the subtle but unmistakable aura of independence. They had come expecting a young woman still figuring things out, and instead, they found someone thriving. Finally, I spoke. "You asked me to babysit because, apparently, I'm not considered family enough to attend your wedding," I said, my tone calm but firm. "So I'm here. And I'm happy to watch Lily with one condition, that we acknowledge the truth about my life." Caroline blinked, the color draining slightly from her cheeks. "What truth?" I stood fully, walking toward the center of the living room. "Truth is, I didn't just survive on my own. I've built a career, a company, a life that no one in this family believed I could. I'm a published author with contracts across multiple platforms. I own my own apartment, my own business, and yes, I am financially independent." Their mouths opened and closed, as if words were trapped. My parents' hands fidgeted, and Caroline's fingers trembled around the tulips. I let them absorb it, giving them the time I hadn't been afforded for so long. "I didn't want your permission. I didn't want your validation. But I also won't let anyone treat me like I don't belong when it suits them." Caroline finally stammered, "Rachel, we had no idea." I gave her a measured smile, the kind that combined warmth and steel.
"Exactly.
"And now you do. So Lily will be fine here this weekend. But I expect respect, honesty, and a little understanding of what it means to be considered family, not just when it's convenient." Lily tugged at my skirt again, and I scooped her up. Her laughter echoed through the apartment, the sound pure and grounding. For a moment, I let myself forget the past, the snubs, the dismissals, the constant feeling of being less than, and simply existed in the life I had built. This was my revelation, not just to them, but to myself. I wasn't the girl who needed permission anymore. I was Rachel Morgan, a woman who had chosen herself, who had claimed her worth, and who was finally being recognized, not for what they wanted, but for who I had become. After letting them absorb the truth, I set Lily down on the soft rug and folded my arms. Caroline's smile had faded into something closer to apprehension, and my parents exchanged uneasy glances. It was my turn to speak, not with anger, but with the quiet authority I had spent years cultivating. "Here's the deal," I said. "I will babysit Lily this weekend because I love her and I want her to have a safe, happy time. But the adults in this room need to understand a few things first." Caroline's lips parted, but I held up a hand. "Not everything is about you being comfortable. This is about all of us growing up, starting with acknowledging our mistakes." I walked slowly around the living room, making eye contact with each of them. "Mom, Dad, you have a pattern of dismissing what I care about. That stops. I will no longer tolerate being spoken down to or treated like my dreams are irrelevant. If you want to be part of my life fully, you need to see me as your equal." Caroline shifted nervously. "And me? You, Caroline, need to understand that being family only when convenient doesn't work anymore. You asked me to babysit Lily, but excluded me from your wedding. That hurts. To earn my trust, you must start being honest, apologetic where it matters, and genuinely present in your niece's life, not just when it suits you." I paused, letting my words sink in. Lily's laughter bubbled nearby, reminding me why I was laying down these boundaries. My love for her didn't make me a doormat. Respect, accountability, and honesty, I summarized. I care about this family, but I will not step back into old patterns. I am not here to fix anyone's ego. I am here to be present where it counts, on my terms. The room went silent. The weight of my conditions hung heavy, but fair. This wasn't revenge. It was clarity, a map for them to navigate the relationships they had once taken for granted. I smiled, softening slightly. "And I will help, guide, and love Lily as much as I want, but only in an environment where everyone is committed to growth, not convenience." Caroline nodded slowly, guilt and relief battling in her expression. "I understand," she whispered. I walked over and took Lily's tiny hand. "See? We can do this. We can have a relationship built on truth, not selective memory." My parents, still a little stiff, finally let their shoulders relax. They had no words yet, but I could see the first flickers of realization that the past excuses were over. For the first time in years, I felt the power of my own boundaries. I wasn't punishing anyone. I was simply showing them that respect had to be earned, and love needed honesty to flourish. And as I watched Lily climb onto the couch with a stuffed rabbit tucked under her arm, I knew that this was the turning point. For them, for me, and for the family we could choose to rebuild together. Properly, finally, and on equal ground. By the time Sunday afternoon rolled around, the apartment was filled with a gentle rhythm of laughter, conversation, and quiet understanding. Lily and I had baked cookies, read storybooks, and even attempted finger painting, her little hands smeared in bright colors that somehow ended up on the rug as well. Caroline hovered nearby, hesitant at first, but gradually relaxing into a new, softer version of herself. I caught her looking at me once, a flicker of something like admiration or maybe guilt, hidden behind her usual smile. My parents, too, were beginning to see me differently, not just as the dreamer who left home, but as a woman who had made her dreams real. I stood in the kitchen, watching Lily chase the sunlight across the floor, and felt the familiar weight of the silver locket against my chest.
Brave.
That word had carried me through every late night, every rejection, every moment when giving up seemed easier than going on. And now, here I was, proof that choosing yourself wasn't selfish. It was necessary. "Rachel," my mother said softly, her voice hesitant but earnest, we didn't see you before, but we do now." I smiled gently, letting them feel the warmth without surrendering my strength. "It's okay. All I ever wanted was for you to see me for who I am, not who you thought I should be." Caroline knelt beside Lily, carefully wiping paint off her little fingers. "I want to do better," she admitted quietly. "For Lily and for us." And in that moment, I realized the victory wasn't just in revealing my accomplishments, or even in setting boundaries, it was in the shift of hearts around me. The people I loved were beginning to learn what it meant to respect, honor, and include me. I held Lily's tiny hand, feeling the lightness of a future I had earned, a family slowly aligning with truth. My eyes drifted to the window, the city skyline gleaming under the afternoon sun, and I felt a profound sense of completion. Choosing myself had not closed doors, it had opened them, wider than I ever could have imagined. And as I watched my family cautiously step into this new dynamic, I whispered quietly, more to myself than anyone else. I am enough. I am worthy. And I will never apologize for the life I built. The words lingered in the sunlight, a gentle anthem of independence, love, and grace. For the first time in years, I felt fully seen, not just by the world, but by myself.